Hello, everyone. Welcome back to English Pod. My name is Marco,
And I'm Erica.
and we're bringing you the third part of our suspense series of New Guy in Town.
That's right. What's going to happen today?
Well, I don't know. There's still so many things that could happen. This guy is kind of weird, right?
Is he a vampire? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, and I would like to thank all of our listeners for contributing and sending out their ideas of what they think happens in this third part.
Yeah, I especially like the story about the rabbit.
Yeah, the rabbit. That was a good one.
Yep.
As promised, we took the idea of one of our listeners and created the dialogue around it.
Yes.
And this time it was the contribution of Babar Dewan.
Yeah, he gave us a great idea for this dialogue.
Exactly. He gave us a really good idea. So thank you, Babar. And this one is for you. In this dialogue, we're going to be looking at some hospitality vocabulary.
Yeah, some phrases you can use when you welcome someone to your house. All right, well, we've got some language to preview, so let's turn now to vocabulary preview.
Vocabulary preview.
On vocabulary preview, we have the word appetite.
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 So, Erica, tell us about appetite.
When you have an appetite, you're hungry, or you have a desire to eat food, right?
All right, so you can have a big appetite, a small appetite.
Really hungry, a little bit hungry.
Okay. Let's look at our next word. Poison.
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 So poison could be a noun or a verb.
Exactly. So when you poison someone, you put something in their food or maybe in their drink that makes them really sick and maybe even makes them die.
Okay, so to poison somebody.
Yep. And the noun is actually the thing that you put inside the food or drink.
So usually poison is some sort of chemical substance.
Yes.
Snakes, for example, have poison.
Yeah, in their teeth.
Right? So if you get bitten by a snake,
you'll get poisoned.
You'll get poisoned. All right, so let's take a look at our dialogue for the first time and see why we are talking about poison. And we'll come back and explain some great words.
Please make yourselves at home. Let me take your coats. Dinner's almost ready. I hope you brought your appetite.
Your house is lovely, Armand. Very interesting decor. Very gothic.
I think it's amazing. Oh, you have such good taste, Armand. I'm thinking of redecorating my house. Maybe you could give me a few pointers?
It would be my pleasure. Please have a seat. Can I offer you a glass of wine?
We would love some.
Here you are. A very special Merlot, brought directly from my home country. It has a unique ingredient, which gives it a pleasant aroma and a superior flavor.
It's delicious.
It's a bit bitter for my taste. Almost tastes like...
Ellen? Ellen? Are you okay?
Did she pass out?
Yeah.
I hope you didn't poison her drink too much. You'll ruin our meal.
Okay, so that was unexpected.
I know, Lois. Can you believe it?
Apparently Lois is helping Armand.
I know.
Maybe she's a vampire.
All right, well, I really wonder what's going to happen next.
We'll see what happens next. But now let's take a look at some of the language in Language Takeaway.
Language takeaway.
All right, so we have a couple of words in Language Takeaway today. Let's start off with pointers.
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 So to give somebody pointers,
you give them some suggestions.
Suggestions or tips.
Exactly.
All right, so suggestions or tips. Let's listen to some examples of how you would use it.
Example 1.
I want to dance salsa better. Can you give me a few pointers?
Example 2.
I need some pointers on how to be a better manager.
Example 3.
Let me give you a few pointers so you can pass your exam.
All right, so pointers, it's clear now. Let's take a look at our next word. Aroma.
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 Aroma. This
Now-
is a nice round word,
Yeah,
isn't it?
aroma.
Yeah.
Well, this word makes you sound really educated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically, it means
Smell.
smell.
Yep.
So you could say, for example, this coffee has a great aroma.
Or maybe this perfume has the aroma of roses and lavender.
Nice. Okay, let's take a look at our next word. Bitter.
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 Bitter. Bitter.
Okay, bitter. So bitter is the opposite of
Sweet.
sweet.
So it's always hard to describe taste, isn't it?
Yeah.
But maybe we can say a few foods that are bitter.
Okay.
So chocolate, when it has no sugar, is bitter.
Okay. Or for example, coffee without any sugar is also bitter.
Yeah, and sometimes red wine can be quite bitter.
So bitter. Okay, and now let's take a look at our last word. Pass out.
Pass out.
Pass out.
Pass out.
It seems kind of easy. Pass and out.
Yep.
But
Oh.
it means something different.
Yeah, when you put them together.
What does it mean?
It means faint or become unconscious.
Okay.
So imagine someone when they're standing up and then suddenly they start to move around and then fall over to the ground.
Okay, pass out.
Yes.
This usually happens when you get really, really drunk.
Maybe sometimes also when maybe you're pregnant, you might pass out.
Right. Okay, to lose consciousness.
Yes. Marco and I have a couple of examples of this word for you.
Example 1.
I drank so much last night that I passed out at my friend's house.
Example 2.
She was standing in the sun too long, so she passed out right in front of me.
Example 3.
My sister passes out whenever she sees blood.
All right, so let's listen to our dialogue again now. We're going to slow it down a little bit.
And you'll be able to hear these words that we just talked about.
Please make yourselves at home. Let me take your coats. Dinner is almost ready. I hope you brought your appetite.
Your house is lovely, Armand. Very interesting decor. Very Gothic.
I think it's amazing. You have such good taste, Armand. I'm thinking of redecorating my house. Maybe you could give me a few pointers?
It would be my pleasure. Please have a seat. Can I offer you a glass of wine?
We would love some.
Here you are. A very special Merlot brought directly from my home country. It has a unique ingredient, which gives it a pleasant aroma and superior flavor.
It's delicious.
It's a bit bitter for my taste. Almost tastes like...
Ellen? Ellen? Are you okay?
Did she pass out?
Yeah.
I hope that you didn't poison her drink too much. You'll ruin our meal.
All right, so interesting story.
Yes.
We have some great phrases that we've used here, so let's take a look at them in Fluency Builder.
Fluency Builder.
We've got 4 phrases for you that are great to use when you want to welcome someone into your house or into your office or anywhere, really.
Exactly. So why don't we take a look at the first one?
Please make yourselves at home.
Please make yourselves at home.
Please make yourselves at home.
So this is a very common phrase when you invite somebody to your house.
Yeah.
You always use this phrase.
Yeah. It's like make yourself comfortable, relax, sit down.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Like, my house is your house.
Exactly. Please make yourself at home.
Okay, good one. Usually people arrive to a party or to a dinner with jackets, coats, scarves. all that stuff. So this next phrase is really handy.
Let me take your coats.
Let me take your coats.
Let me take your coats.
So that means give me your coats and I'll put them in the closet.
Right.
Let me take your coats.
And then a good host would always offer a drink, right?
Exactly. Water, or in this case, wine.
So they would say, can I offer you a glass of wine?
Or sometimes you could say, can I offer you something to drink?
Yeah. So can I offer you a glass of wine?
Can I offer you a glass of wine? You offer me a glass of wine. I say, yeah, sure, I'll take a glass of wine.
All right. And then I would use our next phrase. Here you are.
Here you are.
Here you are.
Exactly. It doesn't mean that you are here.
No.
It's saying to someone, here it is, take it.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
You know what? This is a really, really great phrase. A lot of people who are learning English don't say this, but it's really common, really natural. And if you use it, it'll sound really great.
Here you are. Exactly.
Here you are.
Here
And
you are.
You can use this anytime you give someone something.
Right. So if you give somebody a pen or a pencil, a notebook, here you are. Here it is.
Yep.
Okay. Great words. So let's listen to our dialogue one more time and then we'll come back.
Please make yourselves at home. Let me take your coats. Dinner's almost ready. I hope you brought your appetite.
Your house is lovely, Armand. Very interesting decor. Very gothic.
I think it's amazing. Oh, you have such good taste, Armand. I'm thinking of redecorating my house. Maybe you could give me a few pointers?
It would be my pleasure. Please have a seat. Can I offer you a glass of wine?
We would love some.
Here you are. A very special Merlot, brought directly from my home country. It has a unique ingredient, which gives it a pleasant aroma and a superior flavor.
It's delicious.
It's a bit bitter for my taste. Almost tastes like...
Ellen? Ellen? Are you okay?
Did she pass out?
Yeah.
I hope you didn't poison her drink too much. You'll ruin our meal.
It was a cold evening, the kind that makes you want to wrap yourself in a thick blanket and sip hot chocolate by the fire. But for Julia, tonight wasn't about comfort. It was about curiosity and perhaps a little adventure. She had just moved into a new neighborhood, quiet and green, where the trees whispered secrets and the houses looked as though they held 1,000 untold stories. That week, a mysterious man moved into the large, ivy-covered house at the end of the street. His name was Victor Dane. No one knew much about him, except that he drove a black vintage car and wore gloves even in warm weather. Most neighbors whispered, wondered, and avoided. Julia, however, wasn't like most people. So when Victor sent her a handwritten invitation for a small private dinner to welcome you to the neighborhood, she accepted without a second thought. The note read, "Please make yourself at home. Dinner will be served at 8 sharp." Julia stood in front of the grand wooden door, heart racing just a little. She rang the bell. A moment later, Victor opened the door with a warm but oddly calm smile. "Welcome. I'm so glad you could come." Inside, the house was dimly lit by old lamps. The air was rich with the aroma of spices, cloves, cinnamon, and something she couldn't quite place. "Wow," she said softly, "your house is incredible. It feels like stepping into another time." Victor chuckled. "Thank you. I have a fondness for things with character. Please let me take your coat." As she handed over her jacket, Julia's eyes scanned the room. Heavy velvet curtains, antique furniture, a large painting of a castle above the fireplace. She was intrigued, impressed, and maybe just a little uneasy. "Please have a seat," Victor said, gesturing to a long wooden table set for two. Silver cutlery gleamed under candlelight. As Julia sat, he poured her a glass of deep red wine, a special Merlot, imported from a vineyard in the Carpathian Mountains. "It has a unique flavor," he said, handing it to her. "Here you are." She took a sip. It was strong, a bit bitter, but smooth. "That's very interesting," she said, searching for the right word. "Interesting can be good," he smiled. Julia laughed nervously. "Yes, sometimes it means I'm just not sure what I'm tasting." Victor nodded. "You have a good palate. Most people wouldn't notice the bitterness." They talked for a while about travel, literature, and art. Victor spoke like someone from another world, elegant and precise. But Julia couldn't shake the feeling that there was something hidden beneath his calm surface. Just as he was about to serve the main course, he paused and looked directly at her. "I hope you brought your appetite," he said, with a tone that was almost theatrical. Julia smiled politely. "I did. I haven't eaten all day." Inside, though, a strange tension was building. Something about the way he said it. Was it just old-fashioned charm, or something else? And why, Julia wondered, did she suddenly feel just a little lightheaded? Julia blinked a few times and sat back in her chair. The flickering candlelight seemed a little brighter now, or maybe her eyes were just adjusting. "This wine is stronger than I expected," she said, trying to make light of it. Victor tilted his head, watching her with that steady gaze. "Yes, it has a certain depth to it. Not for everyone." Trying to change the subject, Julia pointed to the tall bookshelf in the corner. "You have an amazing collection. All those leather-bound books. Are they antiques?" "Many of them," he replied, walking over slowly. "Stories passed through generations. I believe books hold energy from the hands that have held them. Don't you agree?" "I've never thought about it like that," Julia said, genuinely curious. "But I suppose that's true. Every book has its own history." Victor smiled, then walked back to the table with a silver tray. On it was a steaming dish that smelled incredible, earthy, rich, and spiced. "Roasted venison," he said proudly, "marinated for 2 days. A traditional dish from my homeland." Julia picked up her fork. "It smells amazing." As she took her first bite, she was surprised by how tender it was. The flavor was intense, spicy, savory, and unfamiliar in a good way. "This is delicious," she said. "I don't think I've ever tasted anything like it." "Most people haven't," Victor said. "It's an acquired taste." She smiled but noticed again that the room felt warmer now. Almost too warm. A bead of sweat formed on her forehead. "Do you mind if I open a window?" she asked. "Of course not," he said. "But perhaps you're just not used to old homes. The air doesn't flow like it does in modern ones." Julia nodded, though she couldn't shake the odd sensation creeping over her. Her stomach fluttered, not in the nervous way, but in an unsettled way. Still, she didn't want to seem rude. "Do you entertain guests often?" she asked. Victor paused. "Rarely. Only those with a curious mind and a brave spirit." Julia laughed, unsure if it was a compliment or a warning. "Well, I guess I'm honored. She looked down at her plate, half finished. Her appetite was fading. Actually, I'm not as hungry as I thought, she admitted, setting her fork down. Victor's expression didn't change, but his voice dropped slightly. You're not feeling ill, I hope? Julia hesitated. A little dizzy, maybe. I think I stood too quickly earlier. He leaned forward slightly. May I offer you some water? Or perhaps something to settle your nerves? She hesitated. Maybe just water. Thank you. Victor stood and disappeared into the kitchen, his footsteps silent. Julia took a deep breath and scanned the room again. Something felt off. The wine, the food, the atmosphere. It was too perfect, too controlled. Then her eyes landed on something beneath the curtain. A shadow. No, a pair of shoes. Someone else was in the room. She didn't move, didn't blink. What was going on in this house? Julia sat frozen in her chair, eyes fixed on the curtain. Her mind raced. Was someone hiding behind there? The shoes hadn't moved, small, polished, motionless. She didn't know if she should scream, run, or pretend she hadn't noticed. Just then, Victor returned with a glass of water, perfectly calm. Here you are, he said, placing it gently on the table. You look pale. Julia tried to smile. Maybe I'm just tired. It's been a long week. Understandable, Victor said, settling back into his chair. Modern life can be exhausting. That's why I enjoy nights like this. Simple, elegant, undisturbed. She reached for the glass, took a sip, and let the cool water calm her nerves. She wanted to ask about the curtain, the shoes, the strange atmosphere, but instead, she tried to act normal. So, tell me more about your travels. You mentioned the Carpathian Mountains. Victor's eyes lit up. Yes. A land of deep forests and darker legends. It's where I grew up. A place forgotten by time. Quiet villages, thick fog, stories whispered after sunset. Julia leaned in, drawn to his voice. What kind of stories? Victor's lips curled slightly. The kind most people ignore. Stories of people who vanish without a trace. Of hosts who welcome you in and never let you leave. That sort of thing. She laughed nervously. You're joking, right? Of course, he said smoothly. But every culture has its monsters, don't they? Julia nodded slowly. Yes. I guess we all grow up afraid of something. Victor looked at her more intently now. What are you afraid of, Julia? She blinked. Snakes. Heights. And mystery dinner parties, she added with a weak laugh. He smiled, but said nothing. Just then, the curtain moved only slightly. Julia turned quickly. Is someone else here? She asked, trying to sound casual. Victor followed her gaze. He said calmly. That's Margot, my housekeeper. She's a bit shy with guests. Julia's breath caught. I didn't see her earlier. She prefers to stay out of the way, he said. But don't worry. She's harmless. Harmless. The word didn't feel reassuring. Julia watched as the shadow behind the curtain vanished. The shoes were gone. She needed to get control of the situation of her thoughts. Victor, I really appreciate the invitation. This has been quite a night, but I might have to cut it short. Victor didn't blink. Of course. But before you go, may I show you one last thing? Something I think you'll appreciate. Julia hesitated. Her instinct screamed no, but her curiosity leaned forward. What is it? She asked carefully. Victor stood, walked toward the hallway, and looked back. Follow me.
And she did.
Step by step, deeper into the house. Something was waiting. She could feel it. The hallway was long and narrow, lined with paintings that seemed to watch Julia as she walked. Victor moved ahead slowly, his steps soundless on the dark wooden floor. The only noise was the faint creak of old boards under her feet and the subtle hum of a grandfather clock ticking in the distance. As they turned a corner, Victor gestured to a door at the end of the hallway. This, he said, is my favorite room in the house. I call it the gallery. Julia hesitated at the threshold. The door was slightly ajar, and a dim golden glow spilled out from inside. Something about the room pulled at her, but also set her on edge. Victor pushed the door open.
Please.
After you. Inside, the room was a strange mix of beauty and eeriness. Dozens of portraits covered the walls, men and women in elegant clothes, their eyes painted so realistically that Julia felt they might blink at any moment. Some looked proud, others frightened. A few seemed to be looking just past her shoulder. Are these your family? She asked. Victor stepped beside her. In a way, yes. Each one of them sat in that chair right there. He pointed to a high-backed chair in the center of the room, upholstered in deep red velvet. Julia tilted her head. You mean you painted them? No, he said, but they all visited me here. For dinner, like you. She laughed, trying to brush off the chill crawling up her spine. Well, that's one way to collect memories. Victor smiled politely. They were fascinating people. Artists, writers, dreamers. They came from different parts of the world, but they all had something in common. What's that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. They were searching for something, and they were willing to look in strange places to find it. Julia turned to face him. Victor, what is this really about? He paused, then said, Let me show you something else. He walked to a tall cabinet and opened it. Inside were dozens of items, old keys, photographs, dried flowers, and small, labeled vials filled with colorful liquids. What are these? She asked, her heart pounding. Reminders, he said simply, from each guest. Everyone leaves something behind, whether they mean to or not. Julia took a step back. Her mind was racing now. The wine, the strange feeling, the way he spoke about people. Victor, I think I should go. Really? Victor's smile didn't fade. You can, of course. But before you do, I have one question for you. Julia swallowed. What is it? Have you ever felt, he began slowly, that the world around you isn't quite what it seems? That something is hiding beneath the surface of normal life, waiting to be discovered? She stared at him, uncertain if he was asking her something philosophical or something far more real. Yes, she said quietly. I have. Victor nodded. Good. Then you'll understand. He closed the cabinet gently, then turned to her. The truth, Julia, is rarely safe, but always worth finding. Behind them, the gallery door clicked shut on its own. Julia spun around at the sound of the door clicking shut. The handle rattled when she tried it. Locked. Her heart thudded loudly in her chest. Victor, she said sharply, did you just lock the door? He didn't even glance back. It's an old house. Doors do that sometimes. Don't worry, I'll open it soon. His calmness unnerved her even more than the lock itself. I'd rather leave now, she said, her voice firmer. Victor turned toward her, eyes soft but steady. Of course. But wouldn't you like to know why you were invited here first? Julia shook her head. I think I've already seen more than enough. He stepped closer, not threateningly, but with a kind of deliberate patience that made her stomach twist. You're an English teacher, aren't you? He asked. Caught off guard. She blinked. How do you know that? I do my research, he said. You see, I'm not just a collector of portraits or dinner guests. I collect voices, stories, the kind that disappear when people grow up. You still believe in stories, Julia. That's why you're here. The words were strange, cryptic, but something about them resonated with her. He continued, language is powerful. Words can shape people's lives, change their minds, even alter memories. Most people have forgotten that. Julia narrowed her eyes. What does that have to do with me? Victor walked over to one of the portraits and gently touched the frame. Everyone who dines here leaves a trace, not just fingerprints, a voice, a feeling, a part of their language, phrases, thoughts, memories. I preserve them. You mean like recording people? Julia asked, confused. He smiled. Not quite. Let me show you. He walked over to a drawer beneath the portraits and pulled out what looked like a notebook, old, thick, and bound in cracked leather. He handed it to her. Go ahead. Open to any page. Julia flipped to the middle and read silently. She said, Please make yourself at home. But he never did. Instead, he asked if she believed in accidents. She smiled and poured the wine. That's when the room changed. Her eyes widened. Wait, this was what I said earlier tonight. Victor nodded.
Yes.
Your words. Your story. Already part of the house. She closed the book quickly and stepped back. That's not possible. But it is, he said. Language leaves a mark, especially when it's spoken with meaning. This house remembers. Julia looked down at her hands. They were trembling slightly. Victor leaned forward, lowering his voice. Do you want to know what people remember about you? No, she said instantly, but part of her did. He stepped aside and motioned toward the chair in the center of the room.
Sit.
Let the house show you. One story. That's all. And then, if you wish, you can leave. I promise. Julia stared at the chair. Everything in her screamed not to trust him, but her curiosity was stronger than her fear. She stepped toward it. Julia lowered herself slowly into the red velvet chair, every nerve in her body on high alert. The room felt even quieter, as if holding its breath. The air thickened around her, like the moment before a storm hits, heavy with possibility, charged with something unseen. Victor stood silently by the wall, watching. As soon as she settled in, a low hum began, so soft she thought she imagined it at first. Then, from the corners of the room, whispers rose. Not loud, not chaotic, but layered, echoing phrases she had spoken throughout her life. She could hear herself saying, I'm fine, even when she wasn't. Everything's okay, when it really wasn't. Then came other memories, classrooms, laughter, conversations with students. She heard herself explaining English grammar rules, comforting anxious learners, cheering on someone nervous before a presentation. Words and phrases she'd spoken 100 times came back to her, like old friends and ghosts. Victor walked toward her, still calm, his voice quiet but clear. This chair amplifies memory. It doesn't just remind you of what you've said, it shows you the impact of your words. Julia watched, stunned, as the portraits on the wall shimmered slightly. One of them, an older woman with kind eyes, seemed to blink. A soft glow appeared around the frame, and Julia felt warmth in her chest. She was a guest too, Victor said, gesturing to the woman in the painting. She was a teacher like you, spoke 6 languages. Her voice helped refugees find hope after war. She never knew how much she changed lives until she sat in that chair. Julia swallowed. What happened to her? She left, Victor said. Not everyone stays. Something in his tone made her pause. Some do. He nodded. Some feel more alive here, in a place where their words matter, where their stories are preserved. They choose to stay, as caretakers, watchers. Julia shook her head slowly. That's not what I want. Victor's eyes met hers. Are you sure? The whispers were louder now, surrounding her with English idioms, comforting phrases, laughter, questions, encouragement. Her voice, through the years, tangled with voices of others. It was overwhelming, but oddly beautiful. She realized something. The words we say matter more than we know. They leave echoes. In people, in rooms, in lives. Suddenly, the hum began to fade. The room brightened, and the portraits returned to stillness. Victor stepped back. You've seen it, felt it. You understand now. Julia stood, her legs slightly shaky. Yes, she said softly. I do. He gave a slight bow. Then you're free to go. But remember, every time you teach, every phrase you speak, you are shaping someone's story. She turned toward the door. It was open now, without a sound. But before she walked out, she turned once more to Victor. One question. He raised his eyebrows. The others, the ones who stayed, do they regret it? Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes this time. They never told me. Julia stepped through the open doorway and back into the hallway. The air felt different now, cooler, quieter, as if the house had exhaled. Her footsteps echoed softly as she walked past the antique paintings, the velvet drapes, and the tall grandfather clock that now stood perfectly still. She glanced over her shoulder. Victor remained in the gallery, hands folded behind his back, like a guardian of something ancient and unspeakable. As she made her way back toward the front of the house, a flood of thoughts rushed through her mind. What had just happened? Was it all real? Or had she imagined it? Some strange trick of the senses, triggered by candlelight, red wine, and an overactive imagination? But no. She remembered the chair, the voices, her own words coming back to her like echoes across time. In the entryway, her coat hung neatly on the rack, just as she'd left it. She put it on slowly, still processing everything. The silence in the house was heavy, but not hostile, almost respectful. Then came a sound, soft footsteps behind her. She turned. It was Margot, the housekeeper. Older than Julia expected, with kind but tired eyes and gray hair pulled into a tight bun. She said nothing, only held out Julia's scarf with a gentle hand. "Thank you," Julia whispered. Margot nodded and gave a small smile. Then she spoke for the first time, in a calm, measured voice. "He doesn't invite just anyone, you know. Only those whose voices carry weight." Julia studied her. "Did you sit in the chair, too?" Margot looked past her, into the hallway. "A long time ago. I came here as a guest. I stayed because I wasn't ready to leave." Julia frowned. "And now?" Margot folded her hands. "Now I help others find their own voices." Julia wanted to ask more, so many questions, but Margot quietly stepped aside and opened the front door. Cool night air swept in, brushing against Julia's cheeks like a reminder of reality waiting outside. She stepped onto the porch. The stars above were unusually bright. The street was still, the world unchanged, yet she didn't feel like the same person who had arrived earlier that evening. She turned one last time. "Will I remember all of this?" she asked softly. Margot replied without hesitation. "Not always, but your words will." And with that, the door closed behind her. As Julia walked slowly down the sidewalk, the night breeze tugging at her coat, her thoughts wandered back to her classroom, to her students, to the many simple phrases she taught over the years. "Make yourself at home." "Can I offer you something to drink?" "Here you are." Simple,
Common.
harmless. But now, she knew, they weren't just phrases. They were keys. They opened doors. The next morning, Julia stood in front of her classroom, a steaming cup of coffee in her hand and her lesson plan half forgotten on her desk. Her students chatted and laughed as they filtered into the room, unaware that their teacher had changed overnight, not in appearance, but in something deeper. She looked at the board, where she had written that day's topic, useful hospitality phrases in English. A simple, practical lesson. But now, the words held new weight. She turned to face the class, her voice steady. "All right, everyone. Let's talk about what it means to truly welcome someone." A student raised his hand, like saying, "Make yourself at home." Julia nodded slowly.
Exactly.
It's not just about the words. It's about how we make people feel. Comfortable.
Seen.
Safe. She walked over to the board and wrote, "Make yourself at home. Let me take your coat. Can I offer you something to drink? Here you are." "These are phrases people use every day," she said, turning back to them. But words are never just words. They carry emotion, memory,
Power.
and the way you say them can change someone's entire day or even their life. Her students grew quiet, sensing the sincerity in her tone. Julia took a deep breath. "Let me ask you something. Have you ever heard someone say something so simple, but it stayed with you forever? A compliment, a kind gesture, a piece of advice." Hands went up, heads nodded, stories began to flow. A father saying, "I'm proud of you." A friend whispering, "You've got this." A stranger offering help in a moment of panic. Julia smiled. That's the magic of language. You don't need complicated vocabulary to make an impact. Sometimes, the most ordinary words carry the deepest meaning. As class continued, they practiced real-life conversations, offering drinks, welcoming guests, reacting to surprises. But underneath it all, Julia was teaching them something more: awareness, connection, the ability to choose words with intention. Later that day, she sat in her office, looking out the window at the empty courtyard. She thought of Victor, of Margot, of the portraits lining the walls, of the chair that had whispered her own voice back to her. She pulled out a notebook, her own now, and began to write. Language doesn't just teach us how to speak. It shows us who we are. Every phrase is a mirror. Every conversation is a choice. She closed the notebook and placed it on her shelf. Some stories stay in a book. Others live in a house. But the most powerful ones, they live inside us.
My name is Alex. I'm 23 years old, and I just moved to a small town called Riverwood. Before this, I lived in a big city, tall buildings, noisy streets, and people always in a hurry. But I needed a change. I wanted something quieter, something new. So, when I got a job offer from a little bookstore in Riverwood, I said yes. The town was 3 hours away by train. I packed all my things in 2 big suitcases, said goodbye to my tiny apartment, and left the city behind. The train ride was peaceful. I looked out the window. The whole time, trees, rivers, and small farms passed by. I saw cows in the fields and children riding bicycles. It was so different from what I was used to. When I arrived at the Riverwood train station, the air felt fresh and clean. The sun was shining and birds were singing. It was a small station with only 2 platforms. An old man was sitting on a bench, reading a newspaper. A woman with a baby smiled at me as I walked past. Everyone seemed calm, friendly. I called a taxi and gave the driver the address of my new apartment. His name was Joe. He was about 50 years old, had a big belly, and wore a blue baseball cap. He talked the whole time. "You're new here, huh?" he asked as we drove through town. "Yes," I said. "Just moved today." "You'll like it here," he said. "It's quiet, but the people are good." "What do you do?" "I'm going to work at Maple Books," I answered. Joe smiled. "Maple Books? That's run by Mrs. Alder. Lovely woman. You'll enjoy working there. And the bookstore is nice. Smells like old paper and warm tea." That made me smile. I already felt a little better about the move. We arrived at my apartment building, which was small and red brick, with white windows and flower pots in front. Joe helped me carry my bags to the door. I thanked him and gave him a good tip. He winked and said, "See you around, Alex." Inside, my apartment was simple but cozy. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a small kitchen, and a living room. There was a soft gray couch, a wooden coffee table, and a bookshelf already built into the wall. The landlord had left a welcome note and a basket of cookies on the counter. That made me feel at home. After putting away my things, I went outside for a walk. I wanted to see more of Riverwood. The streets were clean, and the houses had gardens full of flowers. I passed a bakery, a post office, and a tiny movie theater called the Silver Screen. People were walking their dogs, watering plants, or chatting with neighbors. Everyone I passed said hello. Soon, I reached Maple Books. It was even cuter than I imagined. The building was old but charming, with green shutters and a big window full of books. A little bell rang when I opened the door. "Hello," a voice called. I turned and saw a woman behind the counter. She was maybe 60 years old, with silver hair tied in a bun and glasses that hung on a chain around her neck. She wore a long blue sweater and smiled warmly. "You must be Alex," she said. "Yes," I replied. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Alder." She came over and shook my hand. "Welcome to Maple Books, and welcome to Riverwood." The bookstore was lovely. It smelled like, she said, old books and warm tea. There were shelves full of novels, history books, cookbooks, and children's stories. A soft yellow lamp lit the corner with 2 big chairs and a little round table. I imagined myself sitting there with a book and a cup of tea. Mrs. Alder gave me a quick tour. She showed me where the new arrivals were kept, how to use the cash register, and where the tea and biscuits were. She also introduced me to her cat, Whiskers, who slept in a basket near the window. "You'll start tomorrow," she said. "Just come in at 9. And don't worry, we take things slow here." I thanked her and walked home, feeling tired but excited. The sky was turning pink and orange, and the streetlights were coming on. The town felt safe, peaceful, like a place where stories begin. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about everything. The move, the bookstore, the people. Something told me that Riverwood wasn't just another place. It was going to change my life. I didn't know how. Not yet, but I could feel it. Something was waiting for me here. My first day at Maple Books started with rain. I woke up to the soft sound of drops tapping against my window. It wasn't a storm, just a quiet, steady rain that made the world outside look calm and slow. I made myself a cup of tea, got dressed, and walked to the bookstore with an umbrella in one hand and a muffin in the other. The streets were quiet. A few people were out wearing raincoats and rubber boots. The flowers in the gardens looked even brighter in the rain. I passed the same bakery and movie theater. This time, the bakery smelled like fresh cinnamon bread, and someone was writing today's special on a chalkboard. When I arrived at Maple Books, Mrs. Alder was already there, wearing a yellow raincoat and humming a soft tune. "Morning, Alex," she said cheerfully. "Good morning," I replied, shaking the rain off my umbrella. She made us tea, and we spent the first hour sorting books. It was relaxing, putting books on shelves, organizing by author names, and placing little bookmarks inside some of them. The store was quiet, and the sound of rain made everything feel peaceful. Around 10:30, the first customer arrived. A teenage girl with red hair and a backpack walked in. She asked if we had any mystery books. I helped her find a few, and she smiled and said thanks before curling up in the reading corner with one of them. More people came in after that. A man looking for travel books, an old couple who just wanted to sit and read together. Everyone seemed to know Mrs. Alder. They called her by her first name, Edith, and asked how her garden was doing. She always had a kind answer, a little joke, or a story to tell. But then something strange happened. Just after lunch, I was organizing the fiction shelf near the back of the store when I saw it. A small piece of paper was sticking out between 2 books, The Secret Garden and To Kill a Mockingbird. At first, I thought it was just a bookmark someone had left behind. But when I pulled it out, I saw that it was a note. It was written in neat handwriting with black ink. There were only 4 words. He never truly left. I stared at the note for a moment. It wasn't signed. It didn't say who he was. It didn't make much sense. I looked around, but nobody else was nearby. The store was quiet again. Mrs. Alder was helping someone near the front desk. The girl with red hair had already left. I put the note in my pocket. I didn't know why. Maybe it meant nothing. Maybe it was part of a game or a book club thing. But something about it gave me a strange feeling, like a tiny chill down my back. After work, I walked home in the rain. My umbrella flipped inside out once, and I had to fight the wind just to get straight again. Still, my mind wasn't on the weather. It was on the note. Who left it? Why that message? Was it meant for someone else? Or was it meant for me? Back in my apartment, I dried off, made some dinner, and sat on the couch with a note in my hand. I stared at the words again. He never truly left. It sounded like something from a ghost story. Or maybe a memory someone couldn't forget. I thought about asking Mrs. Alder, but I didn't want to seem silly on my first day. What if it was just a joke? Or something completely unrelated to me? I decided to keep it quiet. For now, that night I had a strange dream. I was back in the bookstore, but it was dark. The lights were off, and rain was falling harder than ever. I could hear it on the roof. The shelves were taller, endless, like walls in a maze. I walked through them, turning left, then right, then left again. And then I saw him, a man, standing near the back wall. I couldn't see his face. He was wearing an old brown coat. His hands were behind his back. He didn't move. He just stood there. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. Then he raised one hand and pointed at a shelf. When I turned to look, I saw a book glowing faintly in the dark. I reached for it and woke up. My heart was beating fast. My sheets were damp with sweat. I looked around my room. Everything was normal, safe, quiet, but the feeling from the dream stayed with me. I got up, went to the bookshelf in my living room, and looked at the titles. Nothing strange, just the same books I had unpacked 2 days before. But then I saw it, a small slip of paper, just like the one in the store, tucked between 2 books on the second shelf. This one said, "Go back, look again." The next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about the second note. Go back, look again. It was short, just like the first one. And again, there was no name, no date, nothing to tell me who had written it. But now I had 2 notes. One found in the bookstore, one found in my apartment. That couldn't be a coincidence. I stared at both of them as I ate my toast. My mind was full of questions. Was someone watching me? Playing a trick? Was it part of a mystery game? Maybe the town had some kind of local scavenger hunt. Some towns do that, don't they? But the notes didn't feel like part of a game. They felt personal, quiet, like a secret trying to whisper its way into the open. At 8:45, I grabbed my umbrella and walked to Maple Books again. It wasn't raining anymore, but the ground was wet and the air smelled like earth and pine. The bookstore looked the same as always, calm, charming, safe. But I felt different as I opened the door. Mrs. Alder was already there, as usual, arranging books on a cart. "Morning, Alex," she said, smiling. "Good morning," I replied, trying to sound normal. She handed me a cup of tea and pointed to a list on the counter. "Could you take care of these returns today? And maybe dust the old shelves in the back? No rush." "Sure thing," I said. I took my time with the returns, but the whole time I was thinking about the note. Go back. Look again. Go back where... The bookstore? The shelf where I found the first note? So after I finished the list, I walked to the fiction section in the back. No one was around. I slowly scanned the books again. Nothing looked out of place. But then I saw something strange. There was a small space between the bookshelf and the wall. I hadn't noticed it before. Just a crack, maybe 2 fingers wide. I bent down and looked closer. Behind the bookshelf, something was there, a small box. I pulled the shelf forward just enough to reach in and grab it. It was wooden, old, with a tiny metal latch. There was no lock. I opened it carefully. Inside was a black and white photo, yellow with age. A man stood in front of maple books. He looked young, maybe early 30s, with dark hair and a soft smile. He wore a long coat and held a book in one hand. The store looked almost the same, but the sign was older, painted in cursive letters. I flipped the photo over. On the back, in the same handwriting as the notes, it said, James, 1987. He loved this place. James. I had never heard that name before. I stood up and held the photo in my hand, unsure what to do. Should I ask Mrs. Alder? Would she think I was snooping? But something inside told me to ask. I walked slowly to the front desk. She was alone, sipping her tea and reading a book. Mrs. Alder, I said, showing her the photo. I found this behind the shelf. She looked at the photo, and for a moment, her face froze. Her smile faded just a little. Then she gently took the photo from my hands and sat down. I wonder when someone would find that, she said quietly. You know him? I asked. She nodded. Yes. His name was James Turner. He used to work here. A long time ago. Before you were even born. I sat across from her. What happened to him? Mrs. Alder sighed. He was the kindest man I ever met. Loved books more than anyone. People came here just to hear him talk about stories. He used to say books had souls, that they remembered things even when people forgot. I listened carefully. Her voice had changed softer, slower. One day, James just disappeared, she continued. He closed the shop one evening and never came back. No goodbye. No letter. Nothing. I frowned. What do you mean, disappeared? No one knows what happened. Police searched. Friends called hospitals. But he was gone, like smoke. She looked down at the photo. We never found him. I felt a chill. Did he leave any clues? I asked. She shook her head. Only his books. And memories. I hesitated, then pulled the 2 notes from my pocket. I found these. She read them slowly. Her eyes narrowed slightly. He never truly left. And go back. Look again. She didn't say anything for a moment. Mrs. Alder, could James still be here? I mean, not alive, but maybe something of him remains. She looked at me quietly. Then she smiled again, but this time it wasn't the same warm smile from before. Riverwood is a quiet town, she said, but quiet places sometimes carry deep echoes. I left the bookstore that evening with more questions than answers. Who wrote the notes? Was James really gone? And what was I supposed to find if I looked again? That night, I took the photo and the notes and placed them on my kitchen table. I stared at them for a long time. The rain started again outside. Wind blew gently against my window. I made a decision. Tomorrow, I was going to learn more about James, about this bookstore, about whatever story was trying to come alive around me. Because I was starting to believe something now, something I never expected when I moved here. Riverwood wasn't just a peaceful town. It was a place where the past didn't sleep. The next morning, Riverwood was covered in fog. Thick, white mist curled around the rooftops and drifted low across the streets. Trees looked like shadows. The sound of birds was softer, almost like whispers. I stepped outside with a photo of James and the notes folded in my jacket pocket. The air was damp and quiet, like the whole town was holding its breath. I wasn't going to work today, just to stack books and serve tea. I was going to find out the truth. When I got to Maple Books, Mrs. Alder wasn't at the front desk. The open sign was still turned to closed, even though it was already 9:10. I knocked on the door anyway. After a few moments, she appeared. Her expression was unreadable, calm but tired. "I thought you might come early," she said. "Can I come in?" I asked. She stepped aside. The bookstore looked the same as always, but it felt different today. The light was dimmer. The air was cooler. As I walked toward the back, I saw that Whiskers, the store's cat, wasn't in his usual basket. In fact, I didn't see him anywhere. I turned to Mrs. Alder. I need to know what really happened to James. She didn't act surprised. Instead, she walked to the reading corner and slowly sat down. "There's something here, isn't there?" I asked. "Something beneath the surface?" She nodded slowly, eyes on the floor. "This building is older than it looks. People think it's just a little bookstore. But long ago, it was something else, a meeting place, a records house, even a private home. James knew all the stories. He loved searching for secrets. I took the old photo from my pocket and placed it on the table. What did he find? I asked. She hesitated. Then she said, "Follow me." She led me toward the back, past the fiction shelves, past the staff-only door, and into the storage room. It was full of boxes, stacked high with books that hadn't been shelved yet. The air smelled like dust and wood. In the corner of the room was a large rug, red and gold, frayed at the edges. She pulled it aside. Underneath was a square outline in the floor, a trapdoor. "James found it years ago," she said quietly. "He believed something was hidden down there. I always told him to leave it alone." "Why?" "Because some doors stay closed for a reason." I stared at the handle in the middle of the wood. My heart was beating fast. I knelt down, placed my hand on it, and pulled. With a loud creak, the door opened. A short wooden ladder led down into darkness. I turned to Mrs. Alder. "Have you ever gone down?" She shook her head. "No. I was afraid of what I'd find. But James, I think he did." I grabbed the flashlight from a nearby shelf and started climbing down. It smelled like earth and old paper. The walls were stone. As I stepped onto the dirt floor, I saw something that stopped me in my tracks. Bookshelves. Dozens of them, just like upstairs, covered in dust, filled with books. But these were older. Some had no covers. Some were written by hand. There were maps, diaries, scrolls, and on the far wall was a table and a chair, and sitting on the table was a leather-bound journal. I walked over and picked it up. The name on the front, in faded gold letters, was James Turner. My hands were shaking. I opened it. Inside were pages and pages of notes, drawings, clues, descriptions of the town, strange markings, symbols, dates, stories of people who had disappeared before. The first page simply said, "I think the bookstore's remembering things." I kept reading. James wrote about how the store changed at night, how sometimes books were not where he left them, how he found whispers in the walls, how one evening he heard someone calling his name from the floor below. "Something is living inside the books," he wrote. "Not something bad, just forgotten, waiting." The last page was short. "I'm going to stay tonight. If I disappear, it's because I found what I was looking for. Maybe one day, someone else will find this. If you do, follow the stories. Don't be afraid." I closed the journal and looked around the room again. And then I saw it, on the wall behind the table, half covered in cobwebs, was a mirror. It was old and cracked. I walked over, reached out, and wiped away the dust. And in the reflection, I saw him. Not my reflection. His, James Turner. He was standing behind me, smiling gently. His eyes were calm. I turned around quickly, but no one was there. When I looked back at the mirror, it was just me again. Just me, but something had changed. The air no longer felt cold. I stayed down there for a long time, reading his journal, going through the books. It felt like James had left a part of himself inside the secret library. Not as a ghost, but as a story, a memory that had been waiting for someone to find it. Maybe that's what the notes meant. He never truly left. Go back. Look again. They were invitations. James never left Riverwood because his story was still alive in this place. I climbed back up the ladder and closed the trapdoor. Mrs. Alder was waiting. "I saw him," I said softly. She smiled. Her eyes looked sad, but also peaceful. "You're the first person who's ever come here and listened," she said. Later that evening, I reopened Maple Books and sat by the window with a journal on my lap. I lit a small candle and watched the fog fade away outside. Whiskers had returned, curled up in his basket. A few customers came in, quietly browsing. Everything looked the same, but I knew better now. This bookstore, this town, held stories deeper than shelves or pages. And somehow, I had become part of one.